Hi there. I'm Stormy May, and I'm here with Jenna Bemis, and we're going to introduce ourselves more in a little bit. But first, I just want to get right into why we're here together, and that is because of this path that we're following that has to do with the magic of horses and um, what what our connection is with them. It's something that both you and I have a lot of practical experience exploring in our own lives. But just to kind of cut to the chase, what is it that, let's start with you. What is it that you think is the magic that draws us to horses, that makes us, spend all sorts of money and time and learn and grow and change in order to be with them? What is it for you?
I think for me, I have to say it was just like this little seed planted within me since I can ever remember. My mom describes me as about a 1 year old, where there were horses in our neighborhood one block up, and there was a park that backed up to their pasture. And all the other little kids would go and explore the park and play with other kids and be with their moms and be in that kind of bonding and playing. And I would just walk right up to the pasture fence and hang over it and just want to be with the horses. And I still remember this one gray mare and just watching her and being with her. So I think my whole life since then has been, like you said, around this motivation to how can I have enough resources and time and ability to put them at the center, because it just feels good to be around them. And I can't even explain what or why that is. It just feels like a part of me that I connect to when I'm with them, that feels whole.
That's funny. Your story reminded me that, like, whenever any park we went to, I knew exactly where the horses were, and that's where I would be the whole time, is hanging out on the other side of the fence with somebody's horses. And that feeling of, they're saying like, hey, would you bring me that grass that's over there?
Right.
So you do, so you pick the grass and bring it to them, and they're like, ah, thank you, oh, that's great. And now would you let me out?
Right.
Whatever else they're saying. Or would you scratch me here? Or like they walk up and come into communication with us. And like, for me, it's like, hey, do you hear me? Do you understand what I want?
Yeah.
And it's something that definitely happens with other animals too, but there's something about it with a horse. I mean, I think it has to do with, like, for most of them, their size and the fact that they are really meeting you eye to eye,
Yeah.
and you're in a vulnerable position because it really could be life and death. You don't know that horse, you don't know what they might be capable of, but for the most part, it's a gentle, peaceful interaction. And how amazing is that?
It is. I just, as you were talking about that, I remember once watching, and I've seen this many times, but there's this one like body memory that was just coming back of like watching horses in their fields and having that yearning in me, like, I want to be close to you. Are you hearing me? Like, I want to be close to you, and feeling them kind of walk a little closer. And, as they were just kind of grazing and being like, oh yeah, 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 this is it. And then watching a little bird who was probably eating seeds out of the manure piles, like right where the horse's feet were, and the horses, you could tell, were aware of where the bird was. The bird was aware of where the horses were. This tiny little fragile tiny bird, right? And just walking on the floor of the ground, right where these big horse feet were, that could instantly, yeah, cause life or death and harm. But it's like they were aware of each other. They knew. And being kind of in the magic of that moment, you know.
Gosh, I spent so much time watching horses and birds. Even I have film of it. I was actually, before this call, I was thinking of going back to get a picture of, like, a horse grazing. I think what I was seeing was that the horse's feet would stir up the little bugs, and
Yeah.
so the birds would be there catching the bugs. And
Yeah.
sometimes the birds land on the horse's back, and sometimes they're right around the feet. But there is this incredible harmony and peace. And I remember not so long ago, it's like, I want to be like that, so that the birds would hop around me and feel as safe around me as they feel around this horse.
Right. And I think that that is something that was written about in that little one of the chapters in that little book, Kinship with All Life, that you have us read as part of your compassionate communication course. There's a chapter in there where the writer talked about that there are beings who put off an energy field so peaceful that all animals, radiate or feel that radiance of peace and will act in harmony. And that's sort of, we know that inherently. We watch it, we see it, we feel it. We might key in on how other animals do that with each other or don't. And, it's written into like Bambi movies and all of these little things, like that there are people too that can be that peaceful. But I think somehow we have to try harder because of our conditioning to be unaware, and maybe sending messages of, okay, if I'm coming in here, I'm so unaware of you and how my energy is affecting you, you're going to just fly away or flee away as a deer or whatever. And so this whole exploration really is about that.
Right. It's like the horses and the other animals are guiding us to show us when we're in harmony, when we're in sync. And that's exactly it. If we're not, they run away. They try and get as far away as possible. And when we are, they come up, they ask how we can play together, how we can help them, how, we can work together to co-create this world that we can all share.
Yes.
There's also
being together. It's co-creating a world that we can share through just being together in that harmony and connection.
Right. It's not one species above another. We're all sharing this and working out how to cohabitate. Another kind of idea for people to think about is how they are kind of similar to like dolphins or other larger sea mammals that we can't be around as much because they're in water and we breathe air. But with horses, they have kind of that similar consciousness of being able to bring us to these states of expanded awareness through harmonizing with us. But we don't have to go underwater to be with them. They're right here. And, when you're in a herd of horses swirling around you, that's an amazing that's where it goes beyond words. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, and to be included in it when you're in the midst of it.
Right. So that really gets down to the core of what initially drew me to horses, and what keeps drawing me to horses is that harmony that's found in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ways to go off track, and we'll talk about those in a bit. I want to talk about how specifically our horses started to awaken us into the idea that there's a different way of being with horses than what we were taught. Because, yes, we say we want to be with horses, and then all of a sudden we're signed up for riding lessons, or we're visiting a friend who has horses, and we're being introduced to a lot of human concepts of how to be with horses. But there's something else. There's the way of just a human and a horse being together, discovering for themselves what it's like in their unique relationship. So, can you think of a particular story that illustrates in your life how you started to awaken to the idea that there's something different in relating to these horses?
Yeah, I think of two that are kind of like my first experience that really awoke me to that, and then the more recent one that's kind of my current journey of being called. And it's the first horse that I had, and then her youngest son, actually. So the first horse that I had was this little Morgan mare. Her name was Champagne, and she was like fast and agile and jumped, and we had a really super tight bond from at least my age, right? And then one day, well, and I'll say too, I mean, I think other people noticed it too. She would do things with and for me that if other people were asking her to do, she would kind of rebel and protest and have resistance. And so we had some really cool moments of flowing together. One day though, we were training for the national, and there was a other show that would have required her to jump some even higher jumps than the national. And so she was this tiny little mare, and these were 4'1" fences that she was being asked to go over. And she was really confident at 3'9". She was really confident at like a hair over. And then this somehow, we raised that bar just the tiniest bit. I think just put a larger top rail on the jump over some standing barrels. And she hesitated, like for the first time ever in jumping. I mean, she was just known as like the horse who never refused or hesitated at a jump. She would jump everything just full-heartedly. And she hesitated, and I felt it, and then with myself pulled her back off that path to the fence. And the woman who was coaching us got really kind of upset with me and irritated, I think, with the horse, and was like, no, this is nonsense. Like, it's a hair bigger. You've been doing fine. You know, you need to be confident. She needs to be confident. Just do it. Well, I wasn't confident. How would I be confident when my partner was telling me she didn't feel comfortable? But there was this system of, it wasn't just me and this horse, it was this other person too, saying, you know, what the objective was, what the task was, and the task was jump this. And the woman ended up taking a whip behind my horse as a way to kind of encourage. She didn't hit my horse, but she took a whip, and the horse did jump. And I felt the shattering of confidence. After that, she started refusing smaller fences. And so I quit jumping her at that point, because I just really felt like to honor what she was saying was, that offended me and that broke our trust. So that was like really my first experience of really seeing that that was not what I ever wanted in my partnership with my horse. I wanted it to be exciting mutually. I wanted it to be confident and trust-based, and like we get to do fun things, not that there's any sort of you are forced. And at that moment I felt we were both forced, and it broke my heart then, and it still is like really tender with me now. That was in 1994, so you know, still really tender. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then her son has come into the world. I bred him, and then he parted with me and had some trauma, and he's now like my greatest current teacher for this exploration. I'll get more into him later, but he is calling me to look really deeply and to explore, how do I relate to the horses? How do I relate to myself? What does this mean about the journey of healing? What does this mean about a world of peace that I want to contribute to? And how do you do that in those tiny little moments when sometimes you don't know, because it isn't that smooth ease. There's something to be healed, something to navigate through. And I'm wanting to do that as much in harmony with the lessons that I've learned, where my system says, oh, something's out of order, and finding the paths where it feels, you know, congruent and connected and easeful and together. So that's why I'm really, you know, connecting with you, Stormy, and trusting some mentorship here to help guide me. I'm so grateful for this work.
Yeah, well, I like that story in that it's kind of the story of when you recognized your own voice. Yeah. Or, you know, your own understanding of the horse separate from what the perceived expert, the trainer, was telling you to do. It's like, no, this doesn't feel right. And that's kind of the core of what I found too. And for me, it was two particular mares that I had. One I got when she was 6 months old, and she was going to be my Olympic dressage horse. And she was just beautiful. She just didn't touch the ground. She just floated. Oh my gosh. It came time to start riding her, and you know, I had such a great relationship with her because we'd already been together for so long by that time, that I could just climb on the fence and get on her with nothing on, and she'd just say, hey, great, keep scratching. But then when it came time for the saddle and the bridle and more, quote unquote, forcing her to go where I wanted when I wanted, she was like, excuse me? That not okay. So, you know, what do I do with this gigantic, gorgeous horse that is telling me it's not okay for me to do what I got her for? Mm-hmm. And, you know, that was what led to the path of the horse. That was what led to, you know, something ain't right here, because I love this mare, she loves me, but we're not doing what I wanted to do. So where's the peace in that? Um, Most people that I knew that were faced with a dilemma like that, they just sold their horse or bred their horse or did, moved the horse on in some way, gave it to a rescue.
One to replace to keep the goal.
Yeah, yeah. But I realized for me, it's more important to have this deep connection with this horse that I've committed myself to, and find that. So that just opened up this whole other world that I've been trying to describe and show people ever since. And then the other was Pony, Sophie. And actually, I still have her. She was sent to me as a 3-year-old untrained pony to be trained and sold as a kid's horse. And oh my gosh, you'll have to meet her someday, but she just is very outspoken. She's like, you will do what? You will do no such thing with me. It's like, dude, you're a pony. This is what we got to do, And, I got to where I could kind of ride her if I was very, very present and as respectful as possible. But it was always like this huge negotiation. And in the end, it didn't feel good. It felt like I was still, I would say like taking advantage of her, like taking advantage of my human mental quickness, that I could, excuse me, manipulate her into being this riding pony. But I knew that it would be extremely hard for any kid to do this, and it wouldn't be ethical for me to say, yeah, she's a safe kids pony. Mm-hmm. So I did what no good horse trainer should do. I bought her for myself and kept exploring with her. And what I realized is what she's saying is really what all horses are saying. She's just louder about saying it, more outspoken. And for that, I love her. I'm so grateful that I followed what she was teaching me as opposed to what others were teaching me about how to control her. And actually, I just had this other woman who used to be a trainer and now is no longer training, kind of similar to my position, and she works on feet. And she came out to work on her, and she says, oh my gosh, this horse is so lucky that you took her on, because there's nobody else that would understand her like this the way you do. And that was really affirming for me to hear from another person who's been on a similar journey. And yeah, I love introducing people to Sophie. Yeah, she's the doctorate level of communication with horses.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah. So maybe we should get into introductions, so we can go a little bit more into our own past stories of what brought us here and kind of the highlights of where we're coming from. I keep putting you on the spot first, so I'll take it. Okay, so I'm Stormy May, and I was just grew up totally horse crazy, just from who knows where, and was able to get my first horse at 10. So I then, it was just a backyard horse. I learned from whatever trainers were in the area, and I did really well. I just learned how to understand horses easily. And by the time I was like 13, I was training other people's horses. I was riding all the neighborhood horses. People just wanted to hire me to work with their horses, which was great, because that's all I wanted to do was be with horses. And then we already kind of went to the part where it fell apart. But in the meantime, I became a professional instructor, trainer, competitor. I was a national examiner for Pony Club and traveled all over the country, was, very successful, had my own ranch. And, but then, like I say, there's this realization of, oh, this isn't actually what I wanted with horses. So I made a documentary, The Path of the Horse. And that's where I kind of documented what I was researching for 2 years, not only with the people that I met, but then I'd go home to my own horses and try it all with them. So to integrate and find my own unique path in it. And then I realized that what I had learned in that was great. You know, it was wonderful for getting me off the path that I had been on, but there was still like this huge human development part that that wasn't part of that horse journey. And when I found how to shift my own beliefs and perceptions and moment to moment experience, that's when I really started living the life I wanted to live, you know, in peace and harmony and compassion, not only with my horses, but with my human partner and with my friends and family. And, you know, it's like, okay, I got it. But then it's like, okay, well, I want world peace. You know, part of my dream is world peace. So how am I going to get there? So I realized, oh, I have to show other people how to get there. And I didn't know, you know, I'm just doing what I'm doing because it works for me. So about 2.5 years ago, I said, okay, well, here's the best of what I'm using every day to be this person, and started teaching that to others. And it's awesome. It works. It's, yeah, you can talk about that part because you've gone through it fairly recently. But so that brings me to why I'm here with you today, is because I want world peace, and I think this is one step to it. So that's me.
I'm just going to say it while, quote you, while I pause before I introduce myself. And in one of the video clips that you have, I think it's a trailer maybe for Path of the Human, or maybe it's in the Path of the Horse, or a thing that you talk about. You say that world peace is really just a whole bunch of people with inner peace. And then peace between becomes natural, and then that is how it happens. And I think that that's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's all we can do is have our own peace, and in that own peace we become a sanctuary. We become peace that others can look to find out how to get their own peace. Thank you.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me when I listen to you just do a brief recap of your journey and then think about my journey, how many parallels or intersections or kind of opposites. And then we've just sort of found ourselves like in this meeting together doing, you know, the same journey with the same kind of hope. So yeah, for me, I too was always just attracted to horses, loved them, started with a few riding lessons. And then within a couple of years, I was 11 years old and met this horse that became my first horse shortly thereafter. And very similar, you know, just riding a lot of different horses in kind of this like backyard sort of farm place where there were a lot of horses that came that had already been maybe, you know, handled not well, developing problems. And a bunch of us kids would like, you know, work with them and be with them and develop those relationships with them. And some of them were horses that were really struggling and kids that were really struggling, and us kind of all trying to find that. So that's kind of part of what I remember too, is just sort of that. I think I've always been exploring that. What is the connection and how do we have that feel right? And really knowing that there were a lot of moments that, you know, there felt like there was too much force or pressure, not ease, or not knowing what to do to make it a smoother kind of journey. And I too did a lot of horse showing. And when I was, I think 14 or 15, had kind of a first person who had a horse that didn't come with already baggage. It was a fresher horse who had need to be trained. And I was able to take her all the way to nationals. We did really well in terms of those kind of standards. And then it was the same timeline where my first horse was kind of pushed too much. I felt pushed too much. She had an injury. I had an injury. And then it was sort of this little crisis for me of what do I do here? How do I want to relate? And about the same time in my life, I was embarking on my own. Well, before I say that, okay, so I was kind of in that whole exploration. And this big question was open for me of like how to relate to these horses and what do they mean? And then a lot of like existential questions that teenagers go through, you know, why are we here? What's this life? And why do I have so much homework? And I just want to be able to be in the pasture with my horses and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But like the big questions were brewing in me. And then my mare was hurt and had surgery, and they didn't know if she would survive. She did. She had a really miraculous recovery, ended up living for 12 more years and had 4 more foals and all of that. She was pregnant at the time. And I had this little just sort of hope, I guess you could say, and it was almost a joke because it was so much fanciful thinking that, you know, would it really ever come real, that she would have this big black colt who would be, you know, marked with 4 white socks and a J on his forehead for my initial Jenna, like his mama had, and a white mark on his nose. And lo and behold, like that foal was born. And so that spoke to me like really loud, really clear, that there is this magic of creation. There's this magic of being that we exist in. The answer of what is life, I don't know, but we're connected, and something about what we think, what we feel, what we imagine to be possible can happen. And it can be like suddenly embodied in life right in front of you in a form of a horse that becomes a fulfillment of your, you know, little wish. And that was so important to me. I think everybody in my life who knew that that happened knew that it was important, and they knew that it had a big impact on me, but I don't think that they maybe understood that like that was it for me. Like the question of existence and the question of like how to view the fact that like the world is this really beautiful place where our needs are provided for through each other, and that we participate in the creation of that. So right around that time, I was also embarking on starting college. I kind of couldn't tolerate a lot of how the world treats each other, and really struggled in the public school systems with kind of the non-harmony with how I felt when I was able to more be with the horses on my own. And I was fortunate that my route to getting out of those systems that weren't working for me was to go to college at age 16. And I started studying psychology and loved it. So then I continued with that for like 10 years and earned my doctorate in psychology, became a psychologist, focused on trauma and trauma recovery. And I would always say that my first horse was my first trauma client. And I learned so much from her. And I would see all of those themes throughout all of the work that I was doing with people. Then this youngest son of hers, Phoenix, who was injured, went through more trauma when he was apart from me. I reunited with him. I also bought him back so that he could be with me, even though that was kind of a nonsense thing to do in my life for like the financial reasons, practical reasons. My heart had to. So he came back to me, and then he got injured. And this started for me just this real soul searching of what is this business about? Psychology, horses, spirituality, that sort of desire for harmonious relating, and what I really want my world to be, and where it isn't, you know, kind of lining up yet. And so I ended up in the last 6 months closing my practice of psychology, and I'm embarking more on the study of presence through horses, and looking at how does healing work, and coming at it from more of like a spiritual or compassionate presence lens. And I view those just to be one and the same. And so that's kind of how I got here. And what planted a seed for me to connect to you, Stormy, of course, as you know, I'll share with the people listening, is that as I was sort of in the midst of a lot of life changes and horses coming and going out of my life because of my financial situation and things, I was studying mindfulness and studying mindfulness teacher training, and got invited to a ranch where the path of the horse was being shown. And so I watched the documentary, and it really resonated with the seeds that my horses had already planted in me about what are we doing together, and how does that impact, you know, the relationship. And I just about fell over when you fast forward from, I think that was like 2014 maybe, and then you fast forward to 2017, and I also want world peace and peace in my own life. So I sign up for this peace literacy training program, and I go, and we're going to meet all these really cool people from around the country who also want to study peace. And I get acquainted with my roommate, and she says, oh, my name is Stormy, I'm a documentary writer. I said, oh, I love documentaries. what have you done? And she said, the path of the horse. And I kind of took a minute to put this all together and was like, oh my gosh, like that movie changed my life. Like, I love you. You sent me like a movie with like horse stickers on it. And I knew it was like personally caring, and it came to me, and now I'm here. And I didn't even know at that point that, maybe 2 weeks later after our meeting, my horse would be injured and I would be called by the universe, called by these horses, called by my internal stirrings to evaluate my entire career, my entire way of working with these horses, and just what is life about? What do I stand for? And how do I do my work, in this world? And we had already met. And so now in this last 6 months, I've taken your course and benefited so much from that. And I'm still, laying this new foundation for a whole new life for me, where I went the human psychology route. And now I've got to figure out how to blend the knowledge and understanding from that with what the wisdom that the horses can offer, and how to keep, bringing that forward for myself first, because that's where it has to kind of start, is that piece within. And then, encouraging other people to explore it and be supported as they do. So that's me.
Excellent. Beautiful. Thank you. And actually, I think that's a good note to end it on. It's almost like we did this backwards, but that's beautiful. It brings us right up to the present, right up to the moment. And that's where the freedom is.